I did have the opportunity, the honor to work for Microsoft for 23 years. I enjoyed it. I thought it was amazing. I learned a tremendous amount. I came right out of college into Microsoft, and then I decided to leave about 3.5 years ago and partner up with Vadim Vladimirsky, our CEO, to lead Nerdio. And it's been a complete blast.
Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to the fourth episode of season three. It's in full swing and it's getting exciting because, today's guest is basically Microsoft. I believe 23 years of experience in Microsoft. Um, you know, I'm excited there's so much going on in my mind. It's Joseph Landis is the Chief Revenue Officer at Nerdio, where he's basically empowering MSPs, enterprise IT professionals alike to build successful cloud environments in Microsoft Azure, the Azure Virtual Desktop. Uh, and during this time, Landis has actually been able to grow its product offerings and the global initiatives, enterprises, and onboarded a lot of partners. Before joining Nerdio in 2018, so Landis has been working at 23 years, where he held numerous senior leadership positions at the company's corporate headquarters in Eastern Europe, traveled to India and Brazil, work. He's been recognized as a channel industry thought leader and 2020 CRN channel chief. In his free time, Joseph enjoys traveling and spending time with his family, reading his way through the New York Times notable books list. And that's something that I will keep an eye out for. In fact, everyone in the audience should, right? We're going to be asking some interesting questions that help us identify his journey, how he got here. So I'd like to welcome Joseph.
Hello, it's great to be here, Hady. Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. We're humbled you took out the time, and you're here with us. And we're going to jump right straight to it. Is there something that I've missed out in the intro? Something that you'd like to share?
No, it was far too kind. I did have the opportunity, the honor to work for Microsoft for 23 years. I enjoyed it. I thought it was amazing. I learned a tremendous amount. I came right out of college into Microsoft, and then I decided to leave about 3.5 years ago and partner up with Vadim Vladimirsky, our CEO, to lead Nerdio. And it's been a complete blast. I've enjoyed every moment of it. Certainly, some moments have been harder than others,
Hmm.
but it's been great. And it's really great to be here and chat with you and be part of this podcast today.
I'm eager to learn a lot about what you've been doing, and with chief revenue officer, a lot of times entrepreneurs and the audience they struggle with financial terms or sheets. Basically, there's a lot that we would try to cover in this episode, and I just learned that you're coming to Dubai in about 2 weeks' time.
I am. That's right. I am coming to Dubai. It's been
Perfect.
probably, gosh, it's been about 4 years since I've been to the UAE. I've always
Okay.
enjoyed it. In fact, I have visited all seven Emirates. So there's a bit of a piece of trivia for you. So I've been to all seven
Okay.
Emirates. I think there's still seven Emirates as far as I know.
Yes.
And I've always enjoyed spending time in the UAE. And we at Nerdio are excited to visit with partners and with customers to really talk about how to build successful cloud practices with Microsoft Azure. So it's the
That's
first time
amazing.
our company has taken a trip to really to the Middle East and Africa. So excited
Hey,
for
that's a another feather in the cap, I believe.
yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about Nerdio. Like, what exactly does it do, and what does your role entail?
Right. So Nerdio, we're a software company, and we are an independent software vendor, an ISV. We build technology on top of Microsoft's Azure cloud, And we really have two sides to our business. One side of the business is about helping managed service providers build successful cloud practices in Microsoft Azure. So these are typically service providers whose customers are small and medium businesses who are looking to evolve to the cloud. And we have
Okay.
a software product, Nerdio Manager for MSP, that helps them price, deploy, manage, and optimize a Microsoft Azure environment. And then the other side of our business, we have a product called Nerdio Manager for Enterprise. And this is a product that's really targeting really enterprises of all sizes, maybe companies starting at 250 users up to
Okay.
hundreds of thousands of users, who typically have IT professionals or maybe have a partner who services them. And we have a product that helps them deploy, manage, and optimize either Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365. And we've had our company now for about 3.5 years, as you correctly said. I'm the chief revenue officer, which is I guess, a fancy title for saying that I am responsible for sales and marketing at Nerdio. And I also kind of consider myself, to some extent, the chief evangelist of the company. I'm out there in different places around the world, really talking about Nerdio on podcasts like this one, with the press, with customers and partners to get people excited about the opportunity to partner with Nerdio.
That's amazing. What's that one thing in your business that you didn't really expect and it kind of just, appeared out of nowhere? What's that one thing that you may remember or recall in the last 3 years?
Well, we started our enterprise business. We actually launched our product, Nerdio Manager for Enterprise, on March 20th, 2020. And unbeknownst to us, of course, almost every company in the world on that date was going to shortly need or already need a virtual desktop product, a remote work product. And that really catapulted that business forward. Certainly, nobody ever wants to say that they benefited from the terrible pandemic that has affected so many people around the world in such a negative and such a terrible way, including many people who are close to me. However, the technology that we have really has helped businesses of all sizes be successful, and that was a huge surprise. We prepared to launch that product, not knowing that there was going to be a global pandemic. But certainly, the global pandemic made the need for our product much greater. And that was a big surprise.
And I mean, it's surprising you were prepared. I mean, during the pandemic, considering the people I had been talking to at that time, it was pretty surprising how a lot of these companies weren't really prepared. Um, and they were far behind the whole digital transformation process.
Yeah, that's certainly true, Hadi. Many, many companies, certainly many partners, were still and still are to some extent in the on premises world, right? They're still buying servers and installing them at their customer site or maybe running them in a data center. They really haven't embraced digital transformation. They really have not embraced the cloud. And I think those companies that had successfully made the move to the cloud prior to the pandemic certainly found work to be a lot easier than those who had not.
Right. So before that, uh, I mean, yes, of course. I mean, you're coming over to the Middle East to educate, and I believe there's still a lot more to learn about that environment. So, what would you say is the biggest myth? Or let's do this. Let's debunk the biggest myth about cloud today.
So I guess I'll maybe debunk a few different myths that are
Let's do
specific
that.
to not just cloud, but really Microsoft Azure, because we build our technology exclusively on Microsoft Azure today. And I would say the biggest myth that I hear from partners and customers is that it is more expensive to move to the cloud than it is to stay on premises. And I just simply think that that's not true. A lot of it depends on how you define expensive. Sometimes your least expensive product ends up being your most expensive product and vice versa. So, we have learned, and certainly through Nerdio's technology, we demonstrate to people every day that betting on Microsoft Azure is the right decision, certainly from an economic perspective. You can deploy a virtual desktop in Microsoft Azure with Nerdio at a much less expensive cost to you than staying on premises. And plus, then you get all the extra benefits of being in the cloud, the flexibility of being in the cloud, the ability to infinitely scale up your business in the cloud. So a lot of times people think that moving to the cloud will be more expensive and even will limit them in some way, but really the cloud gives most customers and partners limitless possibilities.
Okay, so that's myth number one. I mean, people find it more. I mean, they is it just that it appears to be one of those words that scare them, and apart from that, any other myths that you've come across apart
Well,
from
I mean, the
the cloud?
cloud. I think the cloud scares people because the partner or the customer feels they're not in control. They feel like they are running their infrastructure somewhere else. A lot of times I will hear a partner say to me, "Well, my customer really likes to see the flashing lights on the server when they walk into their office." The flashing light syndrome or something, right? And I'm not saying that maybe that doesn't give some people some comfort, I guess. However, when the tornado or the sandstorm or the earthquake comes through and demolishes the customer site, unfortunately, or something like a global pandemic comes and they actually can't get to their office, wow, those customers and partners who were already in the cloud certainly feel a lot better that they had made that investment in moving to the cloud. So whereas maybe there are some people that take comfort in being able to look at their server every day, I think people take greater comfort in knowing that they can scale their business infinitely and they can be more secure and they can save more money and they can really run their business in a more efficient way by investing in moving to the cloud with Microsoft Azure and Nerdio.
You're right. I absolutely agree. Considering that we are Azure partners as well,
Mm.
a lot of these times having a server on site is actually more expensive or costly, right? And requires regular maintenance. I believe that's definitely a myth that I agree upon. And secondly, I believe it's smoother. It's less technical and eats up a lot of power too, I guess. It takes a lot of time. Um, 23 years at Microsoft, and tell us a little bit about your journey over there. Was it in the same function at Microsoft as well?
No, no, it definitely was not. So I started at
Okay.
Microsoft. I actually started as a summer intern in the summer of 1994. I was very fortunate that a man named Rick Thompson, who's a great individual, took a bet on me when probably he shouldn't have. I wasn't, at all qualified to go work at Microsoft, but he took a bet on me, and I got a summer internship. I eventually went back to college and then joined Microsoft full time on May 30th, 1995, and I started as an assistant product manager for the Microsoft mouse and keyboard. That was my first job, and over the years I took on different roles. Someone gave me some great advice. A former mentor of mine, Carl Gulledge, he said, you should view Microsoft as sort of, at least the early days of Microsoft, as an extension of your college time, and just take different classes. Which he meant was, try different jobs and see what sort of suits you. And I think the big breakthrough for me was when I took my first assignment abroad. I moved to Munich and
Okay.
I was leading our what was called our server and tools business for the Central and Eastern Europe region. So we had about 25 countries or so that were part of Central and Eastern Europe at the time. This was in 2005, 2006. Russia, the Czech Republic, Poland, Hungary, the Baltics, Kazakhstan, all the stans for that matter. And I was responsible for driving the server and tools business there. And it was my first time
Interesting.
living and working abroad for Microsoft, and I found that I was pretty good at it. There was certainly a lot of learning for me, and living abroad in Germany was quite an interesting experience. It was a growth experience, both personally and professionally. But I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed that kind of work. And subsequently, I took on roles where the company actually placed me in Russia, in the Czech Republic. I spent 3 years in India, in Bangalore, and then I spent 3 years in Sao Paulo, in Brazil. And I found myself kind of reinventing myself and recreating the roles that I was in. So it never felt like I was at Microsoft for 23 years. It always felt like I was at Microsoft for sort of 2 or 3 year spurts at a time. And that's always the advice that I give people, particularly when they're in a large multinational company, but even not, to try to reinvent yourself, to try new things, to try different roles, because it really keeps you fresh and it keeps the learning just continuous.
Absolutely. I mean, that's great that you brought it up, and I was gonna get to that. Working in Microsoft, I mean, some people would say, okay, it's a corporate, but I really feel, and I think, like, I mean, as much as I've spoken to other people working at, such companies, um, I believe there are certain divisions and departments within or units that really think like a startup. As you said, I mean, if you recall, what was the biggest challenge that you faced throughout this role? I mean, you mentioned it was reinventing yourself, but any particular challenge that you came across and how you actually tackled that?
Well, I think, any person can think like a startup in any role, even at a company the size of Microsoft, right? For me, the biggest challenge was certainly moving to India. So, as an American who had only visited India a few times prior, living in India is a much different story. And, getting an apartment and figuring out how to sort of get by personally there uh, was a challenge. But it was one that I embraced and one that I enjoyed. I chose not to live in expat housing. I lived in a building with other Indian families. So I really immersed myself in the culture.
Yeah, immersive experience.
Yeah, it was really great, but I think the job itself was a big challenge. I led the evangelism team for Microsoft India, so our job was to go around the country and reach out to students, to startups, to IT professionals and developers, and really get them committed to the Microsoft platform. It was certainly the most fun job I had, but it was certainly the hardest one to get going. We had a team of about 65 people. I loved my team. I still am in touch with many people on my team, but really learning how to operate and learning how to get things done in a culture that's totally different than yours was the biggest challenge, certainly, that I faced at Microsoft. But by the end, after 3.5 years, I felt incredibly rewarded personally and professionally that I was able to do it and do it well, I think, and still have relationships that I maintain into today.
And that's one of the things that I really love about working in the Middle East and Dubai. They have a lot of talent coming in, so much diversity, and that's what you may have experienced even in India when you were there working with your team. And I believe that really creates, an interesting synergy when you have so many different backgrounds, bringing in their uh, opinion. I mean, and of course, specifically in that industry. So, what would that one piece of advice be? I mean, that you'd give to someone starting their career within the cloud or tech space? I mean, you've
Well,
seen it evolve, right? You've
yeah,
seen it going from servers to cloud.
well, I think the advice that I would give might be a little bit less about cloud or technology. I think it's just more about starting your career. I have a son who's starting his career now, and I have two other children who will soon be starting their careers. And I think it's all about trying different things. I think it's all about working as hard as you can and adding as much value as you can. Someone gave me some advice early on in my career, which was help other people be successful and they'll help ensure your success. And I think that really holds true many, many years later for me. As much as you could be giving of your time to help other people succeed, other people will in turn help you succeed.
Absolutely. So, trying different things, helping other people. Would you say that is your favorite productivity hack?
Well, I'm not sure if it's a productivity hack necessarily. I probably have other productivity hacks that I could talk about, but I think, helping other people succeed is just part of being a good person. Giving of your time, I think, is part of being a good person. There's a person in our industry that I work in, a guy named Rob Ray. He worked for a company called Datto that was recently acquired. And when I started at Nerdio, Rob was one of the first people that I really looked to talk to. And the thing that struck me about Rob, and the thing that I really enjoy about Rob is he's so incredibly giving of his time, and he expects nothing in return. And I think it's one of the most incredible traits you could find in a person. It's this, sort of giving DNA that people have that I think more people should probably have.
Okay. So you mentioned you had some productivity hacks that you wanted to share for entrepreneurs. Is it the
Well,
giving part?
yeah, well, the giving part is certainly great. I mean, from a productivity hack standpoint, I was actually talking to someone else the other day. Something that I learned from a previous manager at Microsoft, Paula Belizia, who was the country manager, the president of Microsoft Brazil, is color coding your calendar. I think color coding your calendar is something that I do. Some, I'm sure other people do. I think a lot of other people do, but not everyone does. So I color code my calendar, and the way I do it is anytime I'm talking to a customer or partner or anything external, like talking with you, I color code the appointment green. And then I have other colors for internal meetings. I have colors for meetings with Microsoft, perhaps. I have colors for recruiting, which is a big part of my time. But I like green. Green is a good color. And I attempt to see if I can make my calendar 70 to 75%, if not more, green every day. The more green, the better, because it means I'm talking to more customers and partners. And I think the truth is found with the customer and the partner. So I
Absolutely,
think you could,
absolutely,
yeah, you could kind of look at your calendar at a quick glance and you could see how you're spending your time. If you see a lot of blank time with nothing there, you could ask yourself, what's that all about? Are you spending enough time thinking? Are you spending enough time coming up with new ideas? Whatever the colors are that work for you, I think color coding your calendar is a good productivity hack for sure.
for sure. And what are the other colors like? I mean, orange, yellow, red. What's for brainstorming or just thinking about ideas? What's the color
Yeah,
for
but
thinking?
I think I learned from another previous manager of mine, Terry Myerson, who was an executive at Microsoft, now has his own incredible healthcare company called Truveta, that you need to block off time in the day to think. You need to block off time to just, sit at your desk or sit wherever or take a walk and think about things that are important. It's sort of the best way for you to be creative. In fact, Terry always talks about having one-on-ones, walking with people. I did that with him a few times. So I think, it doesn't really matter what your colors are, but definitely I'd say colors for one-on-ones with your team, colors for thinking, colors for internal meetings, and whatever kind of works for you.
Awesome. No, that's great. I mean, I try to keep my calendar as organized as possible. I block out time, but the color code thing is something I really want to apply to different activities. Sure, that's great. I'm sure our audience would love that. Um, how do you see, cloud and Web 3.0, and how does that change anything within your industry?
I don't know about Web 3.0. I mean, I think that's sort of a bit of an overused term, but the way I always describe cloud to partners that I speak with is if you look at Microsoft, and again, we build exclusively on Microsoft Azure, but if you look at Microsoft, Microsoft for the past 18 to 20 quarters has reported in their quarterly earnings that they've grown their Azure business somewhere between 45 and 50% a quarter. So 45 and 50% growth year on year is pretty dramatic. But it's even more interesting when you look at the fact that Microsoft Azure is probably about a $15 billion business that's been around for 11 or 12 years. So really, stop and think for a second. Can you think of any other business that's been around for 11 or 12 years that's $15 billion or more in size and that continues to grow by 45 to 50% a year? That's actually quite staggering. So I always say to partners, if your business is not growing by 45 to 50%, then you need to ask yourself why. And maybe it makes sense for you to jump on board with this concept called the cloud, and specifically jump on board with Microsoft Azure, because Azure is the biggest investment that Microsoft is making in the company, whether it's a CapEx or an OpEx perspective. And as a partner, I think you need to figure out where Microsoft Azure fits into your business as well. Because why would you not want to ride the wave of Microsoft's largest investment? Why would you not want to
Of course.
ride the wave of something that is growing so dramatically. It's shocking to me when I hear partners continue to say, I don't really know about this Azure thing. That seems like something that's out in the future. Well, it's actually not. It's actually in the here and now, and it's actually been in the here and now for a number of years now. And if you as a partner don't believe that, or you're not sure what it means, then I certainly strongly suggest that you educate yourself on the opportunity with Azure, because it's the biggest opportunity right now when it comes to public cloud. And certainly most partners are already Microsoft partners, and as a result they should really deeply consider how their business can benefit from Microsoft Azure.
Absolutely, for sure. If there was anything that you would probably change within your industry, of course, without not giving away too much of your ideas, but what would that one thing be that you'd like to change?
Well, Hadi, I don't know about change necessarily, but I always talk about the biggest constraints that we have to growing Nerdio. People ask me, how do you grow faster? Or how at a startup that's been around for, 3.5 years or so, how do you keep growing? And I always say that I think the biggest constraint to growing our business is hiring great people. I really think that that's the number one constraint: finding and hiring great people. So I don't know if it's something I could change. I spend a lot of time on recruiting
Yeah,
every day and re-recruiting our existing employees, which I think is equally important. Re-recruiting the team to the mission. If I could find a way to find even more great people and bring them into Nerdio, I would do that. I feel like I spend a ton of time on it already, and maybe I need to come up with my own productivity hack to spend even more time doing it, to just find more great people. If any of your listeners have a specialization in desktop virtualization and you want to work for a great startup, please reach out to me, jlandys at getnerdio.com. But that's the biggest constraint that we have to growing our business, Hadi. And I think if I could change anything, it would be just finding and having the opportunity to talk to more great people.
I see. That's so. At the end of the day, it's usually it does come down to whether people or uh, employees resonate with the value of the company, and they're a great fit in terms of a culture, right? Which is something that we even the founders at Tech Rebel try to push a lot. It's the continuous search for people who we find as a great fit, and they resonate with some of the values. That's a great tip. I mean, eventually, it's the people that make the company.
It is. It is. The culture is super important when you're forming a startup. You have to be quite intentional about thinking about what the culture is and really driving it and owning it every day. And I think that Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, talks a lot about the CEO really leading the culture. And I think we're fortunate at Nerdio that we have a CEO who's defined a great culture, and who really lives it and breathes it every day. And I feel like it's my job as a chief revenue officer and one of the leaders of the company is to continue to promulgate that culture, and hire people who I think will fit in well with the culture and bring some of their own culture with them as well.
Amazing. Well, yeah, we definitely hope for that as well. Um, so, being in sales and marketing and as chief revenue officer, are you still relying on those old school networking methods? Are you busy attending events, or do you think that's transitioned or changed?
I don't think events are old school, and I'll tell you why. Because I think, Hadi, people ultimately want to talk to people, and I don't see that ever changing, quite frankly. Now, obviously, we had a disruption during the pandemic where in-person events were much harder, right? And we all sort of stayed in our homes or close to our homes, and we had to sort of reset our expectations around what it meant to talk to other folks. There was a lot more spending time on Teams, right? And a lot more talking on the phone and things like that. But at Nerdio, we're gonna participate and run more than 300 events in 2022. So that's actually pretty shocking if you think about it. 300 events. There's let's
Yeah,
call it 250 work days this year. So you say, well, how are you going to run 300 events? Well, we really value the opportunity to get out there and chat with partners and potential clients and existing partners and clients. So I think events are going to continue to be a big part of how we connect with each other. Certainly, we've seen the explosion in digital over the past decade. Certainly, things like your podcast and other podcasts and
Thank you.
webinars have grown in popularity. I'm a big podcast listener, and I think that there's incredible learning to be had from others. So
Absolutely.
those are all going to continue. But it's hard for me to say sort of or precisely define what's old school and what's new school. I think our perspective is something we learned from a great analyst in our space, Jay McBain. Be present everywhere, and
Mhm.
that's what we try to do in Nerdio. We try to meet our potential customers, our existing customers and partners where they are, and sometimes that means being in person at an event. Sometimes it means doing a call with them. Other times it means hopefully them listening to us on a podcast like the Tech Rebel one.
Thank you. So apart from these events, what other networking methods have you applied? I mean, you mentioned calls, getting on calls with them, but any other methods that you would consider falling into, networking?
When we started Nerdio, Vadim and I, with the perspective that if we could first educate people before we sell them anything, that would be the way to go. So we spend a lot of time, Hadi, in our company trying to educate partners and clients. And as a result, we started this year running our own series. We call it the Nerdio Training Camp, where we invite potential partners in, existing partners in. There's no charge. And we teach them how to build a cloud practice in Microsoft Azure. And it really has gone well. And we don't do a lot of selling of Nerdio at those sessions. It's just really about how to get comfortable with Microsoft Azure, how to get comfortable with Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365. And I think that's been a very big evolution for our company. In the past, we would go to other people's events, but now we run our own events as well. In fact, we have our own large format first party event called NerdioCon. It's a
Nerdio
partner
Con.
event. NerdioCon. It's actually the next one is taking place February 27th to March 2nd in Cancun, Mexico. We're going to have about 350 partners from around the world taking part, and we think that the more we could become the trusted advisor to partners and customers, the faster they will end up adopting the technology that matters to them and that allows them to partner with us. So I think when you talk about events, it's not just about sort of signing up for a trade show. Those are great, and we'll do a lot of those. But also, I think lending your own perspective to it, running your own events that can add value to partners and customers, and that's something that we've made a big investment in Nerdio. And as we move into 2023, we'll make an even bigger investment in.
For sure. And I wish you guys all the best. And I'm excited. And I mean, 300 events, it did blow my mind. But I mean, it feels like, yes, it can be achieved, out of all those days. So you'd say educating, partners and clients is that number one, that top strategy for success in marketing and sales uh, within digital transformation.
I think it is. I think education is certainly one of the most important things. Educating partners and clients, and you could do that in many ways. It could be, during the pandemic, we did a webinar every day where we were educating folks. But a lot of it is content as well. We early on in our company's history, and we've continued it until today. We produce a ton of valuable content that people can read, and in fact, that helps us with things like organic SEO and people visiting our website, and people viewing Nerdio as a hub, as a place that they can go to learn and to get the content they need to be successful, whether that's sort of printed content or even videos. For a very, very long time, we were producing one video every day, our demo of the day video that went on our YouTube channel. So I think there's a lot of ways to go at it. There's a lot of ways to go at it, even if you don't have a lot of money to spend on marketing. In our early days running the company, we were really all about content and organic SEO. And then we started going to events, and then we started doing some other things that maybe cost a little bit more money.
Amazing. So that is for all the guys in sales and digital transformation, cloud sales. You know what it is. It's educating. I mean, I'm certainly inspired as well as pumped. I mean, I want to set up a goal myself. At least have or come up with a video a day or something. So, hey, Joseph, I would again like to thank you for your time. I understand I don't know what the next meeting. I hope the next meeting on your calendar is green, and I'm gonna try to do the same. It's been great chatting with you, and I look forward to meeting you in person uh, soon. Um, and once again, guys, we will be posting the key takeaways from this conversation. Again, Joseph, I'd like to thank you for your time. I wish you all the best for Nerdio and the growth that comes along with it. And I hope you guys have found this useful.
Thank you
Joseph,
for having me, Hadi.
yeah,
I appreciate it.
we're humble. We're humble. Have a great day ahead. See you soon.